Okay guys, so now we're going to go ahead and start the scratch art demo. So the first thing you're going to want to do is take your sheet after you've cut it in half. You should have two halves. One half is going to be used to trace and the other half is going to be used as a reference. What I'm going to do is cover the back with pencil. You want to get it nice and heavily drawn. The heavier you draw it on, the better it will be for tracing. You don't want any holes. When I say holes, chunks like this, you want to try to hide. Make sure they're all covered up. Okay. Next, you can use tape or a paper clip or whatever you want to do. Just make sure it's well attached. I'm going to use a paper clip. I'll have to move that paper clip around a little bit. And then to show you how I'm going to trace, I'm going to use a colored pencil so that you can see where I'm tracing. The key with scratch art is that you're going to be working backwards. So you're going to have to get used to areas that are black, you're going to want to leave all the way black. So when you look at your picture, you're going to want to look for those areas and make sure to tell yourself, okay, I need to avoid those areas as much as possible. So the key is, I would recommend for your first scratch art, trace as much as possible. You don't want to make any outlines, but when you're tracing, it's okay to make outlines as long as you don't do that with your X-Acto knife. I'll show you what I mean in a little bit. But I'm going to start tracing everything I see. So I see this line is a little bit brighter than everywhere else. So I'm going to go ahead and go around those areas. What that's going to do is tell me, why did I draw that? When you're tracing, you're going to see those areas showing up. And so when you're working with your X-Acto knife, you're going to come up to an area like this and say, why did I draw that? Oh, okay, it's nice and bright. I can take off a bunch there. So it'll look kind of like a topographical map, or one that shows you the highs and lows. After I'm done drawing all these borders, I'll come in and draw some of the directionality of the fur, just so that I know what I'm doing. Sometimes it's easy to forget where the fur goes and what direction it goes, so drawing it on will help. So the key is, remember, the reason we're tracing for this project is for you to see just how much goes into studying an image before you ever paint it or draw it or illustrate it in another medium. When we do the drawing project, you guys are going to trace, or you're going to grid everything, but this will help you see just how much goes into pre-sketching and pre-drawing. It takes a lot of time, and the average artist doesn't trace. Some do, but the average artist won't trace. They'll take their time drawing all these details, And what it does is prepares you for the actual assignment that you're drawing. You'll feel more prepared, you'll know what to expect, you'll remember where curves and sections are. So notice how I'm going around the nose. There isn't an outline there, and I'm not going to draw that with my X-Acto knife. I'm just kind of giving myself a border for me to put marks into when I'm working on my scratch art. I'm going to circle areas like this right here where it's nice and a little bit dark, and then as I'm working with my X-Acto, I'll come up to that area and say, why did I draw that? And I'll look at my picture and say, oh, okay, that's a darker area. I need to make sure I leave less marks there so that it looks darker. Here there's lots of marks, here there's less marks because I want to leave it a little bit darker. I'm going to go around these edges too. Take your time with tracing. If it takes a whole class period or longer, that's okay. If you mess up the tracing, start over. There's nothing wrong with starting over if you're not loving it. It's important, especially even same thing with the drawing project. When we get to the drawing project and you have to grid it out, if you don't like the way the underdrawing is looking, then you shouldn't do the project because you're going to be stuck doing a project you don't love so much. Here, this area is all the way white and it's so small it would be really hard to outline around that area. So I'm just going to color it in. And what that'll tell me when I'm working on my piece is I just need to scratch that whole area off with the X-Acto knife. I'm applying a pretty fair amount of pressure onto the board, not a crazy amount, because don't be if you're not careful, you can actually dent the board, and you don't want to do that. Now I made this look really simple, like it'll take just a few minutes to trace it, but if it takes you 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or like I said, a whole class period, that's okay. You're getting used to the image, and you have to remember I've been drawing this for a long time. I'm going to come in and draw the whiskers too. I'm going to add a couple here just because. I think I forgot to do the eye, so I'm going to come over here. Again, I'm just going to color that in because that's a little easier than tracing around those areas. And I'm just going to go like this. Notice how you can't see the eye up here. Think about the chimpanzee from when we introduced the project and we were talking about how that brow was nice and shaded and we didn't need the indication of an eyelid to know that that's the top of the eye. That drama is something you want to start to think about and look for when you're tracing your picture. So I'm just going to go around here, just a little like half moon shape. There's a little reflection there. And then I can give myself just a little bit of a boundary right here and here, and that kind of lets me know where the eye is going to start to taper. I could do the same thing over here, just put a little line. You don't have to do that, but you can if you want. And then I'm just going to give myself a little indication right there. Okay. Next, what I'm going to do is just indicate some of the movement of the hair, because basically when you get this on, that looks pretty intimidating. It's a lot of black and it's really scary. And I find that for most students, they need a little bit more help than that. So for your first scratch art, we're just starting to incorporate and learn about rhythm and movement. So what I would do, the artists, you can see they did lots of hatching and cross hatching. If you don't like that and you just want to do hatching, I personally prefer hatching. You can just kind of lay in the hairs every once in a while. They're easier to follow here. You can kind of see that the hairs are going this direction. Just lay a few on. If I just go like this, that's not going to help me do anything. So just kind of drawing some of the hairs, not only will that help me remember the length of the hair, but it's just a little less intimidating than looking at all that black on the board. If you find after tracing that you're confused and a lot of it's not making any sense, you're feeling a little bit lost, put this back on the black board and trace a little bit more. It means you probably didn't trace enough. Now, I don't like what the artist did here, so what I'm going to do is just kind of pretend that they meet, because that's what they do. If you have a cat or a dog, their hairs kind of meet right in the middle of their brow or snout, like so. And then the hairs go down this way, so I'm going to draw that. They kind of start to curve out like that. Just having those little lines there will help. And you can see that's a little less intimidating. Just having those marks in there will kind of remind you what you're doing. Over here, not so much. That's mostly all white. I don't really need to take all that off. But I can indicate a couple. In the nose, you make that up when you get started, but if you want to, you can outline around those edges too. Okay, over here. The actual tracing is pretty challenging, so if you're feeling confused or a little bit stressed while you're doing it, that's okay, that's normal. Again, this is your first time really studying a picture this much in depth. So if it's a little overwhelming, that's okay. Even though it's tracing, I doubt you've ever traced something this in detail. So that's okay. Get that curve here in the snout. Like I said, this is an easy one. If you're feeling behind or you need to, you can take this home and easily trace it at home. Okay, so I think that's pretty good for now. This is about what you want yours to look like. Some students will trace more. If you want to trace more, it's entirely up to you and how much control you feel you need in this, okay? All right, moving on. Let's go ahead and start with our X-Acto blade. Make sure it's tight and brand new. Then we're going to take this off and begin. The catch is our hands are greasy, so we want to make sure that we have a sheet of paper underneath our hands at all times. So you can do a little folded sheet of newspaper or a regular white sheet of paper. And then you always want to have your picture next to you. So I know you can't see it in the video, but this guy is right in front of me so that I remember where the directionality of the fur is. You can also just kind of keep it right here, which is what I'm going to do so that I can study it. Okay? The key with scratch art, start in the least important areas first. So don't go right for the eyes or the nose, because that's where our direction as viewers is automatically going to go. And if we do that, then if we make a mistake, the viewer is going to automatically go to those areas that we maybe didn't do such a great job on. So I would say right here is great. It's nice and bright. If I make a mistake, I can just take more off. Okay, so let's start. If your blade moves around, when you tighten it, you twist it this way and then you twist this the other way so that you kind of twist like this if it's ever loose. Okay, so let's start. I'm just going to carefully start making my lines. Notice how the blade is down. If you go like this, it tends to make a squeaky, high-pitched sound, but it just depends on how you hold it. Everybody's a little bit different. Notice how I'm not taking it all off. You always want to maintain a little bit of that black in there. That's really important. If you take it all off, they did it here. She probably had a scratch board. We're working on scratch art paper, so it's a little different. You want to maintain a little bit of the integrity just so that it looks like it's still fur. And notice how, I don't know if you can tell. Let me try to zoom in. There you go. Notice how they're all ending at different lengths. So sometimes I'm not going like in perfect rows like that. I'm just kind of making them up and kind of putting them on loosely. It's easier to go quicker, but when you're first starting scratch art, it's okay to go slowly as you try to figure it out. One of the things you're going to be graded on with scratch art is having this picture in front of you. Not this one, but your actual picture that you print. So I'm going to start to rotate it up a little bit because I'm noticing in the picture they kind of rotate up a little bit.